This is the Griffin that I was showing you some unfinished pieces inside. This is actually the first of its ilk, and essentially it can sort of mimic a 12 string a mandolin. Very mandolin-like, but I generally, it's good for chunky rhythms like that. I often finger pick it, because that's one thing you couldn't do with a mandolin. It's just got a very sweet sound. So people using it for, I mean, as you can see, it sounds very acoustic also. It doesn't sound at all like a solid body electric.
Now, is that typically also, just in terms of the tuning of this instrument, is that something that you had learned about when you decided to design this particular model?
I kind of stumbled onto it. I've been making a lot of baritone 12 strings for years, and they were generally tuned normal 12 string, even though they were down a fourth or a fifth, depending on the instrument. Starting with the first ones that we made for John Sebastian and Eddie Van Halen in the old days. The idea of the 12 strings were always very big sounding.
Yeah.
And I always wondered if it would be possible to get the higher strings in octaves too.
Yes.
And the interesting thing was I finally did it, and it just didn't sound all that musical. What happened was the discrepancy in string gauge for the higher courses would allow you could get it to intonate when you were on the bench, and you could check it, you would tune it carefully and check the octave. You got it in tune, but when your fingers were on it, just because you'd be pushing down more on the thin string, would go more into the fret.
Yes.
It just didn't sound that sweet. And I considered that experiment, it was a 17.5-inch guitar, sort of a failure. And then I said, well, let's see what happens if we put it all unison. And it was like, it was just extraordinary.
When did that happen? What part of your life did that occur?
Oh, no date on this one. I'm guessing about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
Well, we've sold an amazing number of these. I was selling a whole lot of baritone 12 strings. The company's changed a lot because I was selling kind of funny instruments.
Yeah.
Because I just had some ideas about some interesting things.
Sure.
And maybe I was nervous about doing battle with everybody else. And so I was doing this niche thing. Also, the good thing about it was that I had interesting people buying them.
Yeah.
You know, I'd have Skunk Baxter buying a Barry 12 and be all over the John Carpenter Werewolves movie, and it would just be very visible if James Taylor played his Griffin, or Eddie Van Halen was playing one of his Barry 12s. It just created a lot of interest.
Yes.
So I was kind of happy doing that, but then when I started talking to stores, it was like, well, no one's going to come in looking for a Barry 12 or a high tune 12. They might get to play it and they might love it.
Yes.
But stores didn't want to stock stuff like that. And then some of the people I was dealing with started asking for standard tuned guitars, 6s and 12s. Like Dave Matthews just got a standard tuned 12.
Yeah.
And some jazz people, like this guy Peter Parente, a wonderful musician from Florida who's been Gloria Estefan's guitarist for 3 years now. He bought a Griffin so he could mimic these high-tuned Cuban and South American instruments. And it was such a revelation not to have to worry about stage monitors, because the people playing these high-tuned instruments trying to monitor it with a 17-piece band, it was like a nightmare for them and the sound man.
Right.
And he was having such a good time being able to get a little monitor going for himself and getting a great sound in the house that he had to even make him a standard tuned 6-string nylon for that gig. And I started selling a lot of those. So now I'm no longer just doing strange pieces.
Yes.
This is our standard tuned 12 string, and with a arched top, carved top. But what this has that's interesting is piezo anti-magnetic pickup. So that was the piezo. This is more of an electric 12-string sound. And the piezo sound. And the blend is really nice. So it works for, it's just a very fat sounding.
It's such a great big fat, yes, it sounds great. It's got a very, and again, that is not a baritone instrument.
No, this is standard tune.
It's a standard tune. What a great, just a warm sound.
What I do with my standard tune 12 strings that I didn't see other people doing, but just from studying other pieces, most 12-string guitars that are tuned to standard tuning have a standard 6-string scale length.
Yes.
Like a 25.5-inch scale length, which is very happy for the all the lower strings. But the higher strings, especially the G octave, the octave strings are a little tight, which is why most acoustic 12 strings are not doing very well.
Right.
Some hold up great, but
yeah.
Generally speaking, there's a huge amount of tension on the bridge.
Yeah.
That extra tension also is felt when you play it.
Yeah.
It's harder to keep the action proper. Of course, as soon as the action gets a little out there goes the intonation.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I've come up with a 24 and an 1/8 scale, a little smaller than even the Gibson 6-string scale.
Yeah.
And what it does is it stays, the normal strings, the normal 6-string set is still quite comfortable.
Yeah.
But the octaves are also really comfortable, and so it just plays really, really easy. And you know, people think I've done some kind of magical thing to make them play better.
Maybe,
but
yeah, it sounds like you have,
it's
yeah.
it's really kind of a no-brainer getting the scale length proper. It's like the difference between a viola and a violin. If you're trying to work to a certain tonal center,
yeah,
you'll have the appropriate sized scale length.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think for a standard tune 12-string, the appropriate size scale length is a little smaller than what's commonly used.
Yeah.
I mean, Guild addressed that in the old days. They used to give you a standard scale, standard tune 12-string, but they used to tell you to tune it to D.
Yeah, right.
Which is fine. A lot of people do that. But generally speaking, if you're buying a 12-string, the reason you're getting it is because you want some of these high chimey notes.
Yeah, that's right.
So detuning it.
And that brilliance kind of defeats the purpose of the instrument to begin with, right?
Right. So,
okay.
So I've been doing rather brisk business in these pieces now, and also the standard 6. We do this in both models: the flat top, which is more like the other instrument I was playing,
yeah.
and also this kind of carved top.
Okay,
situation.
Great. And what's the name of this particular instrument?
We're calling this the Swift.
The